Hello everyone, I'm making this video to show you several pieces of deleted dialogue in The Witcher 3. They are available through the Brothers in Arms mod, which you can find in the description, and the interesting thing about them, as was the case in my previous video, is that despite fixing and restoring many things in the next-gen edition of The Witcher 3, CDPR have chosen not to include this dialogue in the game, indicating that there is something peculiar about it, and I will discuss that in the video as well. So, the dialogue in question is between Geralt and Ciri on the Isle of Mists, in that iconic scene where he finally finds her, which, by the way, was clearly not designed with the new armor sets in mind. So, with the mod installed, you will have two more optional choices than usual, each of them with two variations. The first one is about Keira Metz, when Ciri talks about arriving in Velen with Avalach.
He failed to reach the portal in time. We had agreed that if anything went wrong and we were separated, we would meet at his hideout in Velen.
You landed with the crones. He ran into Keira.
Keira? Keira Metz? What's she doing in Velen?
You can choose not to dwell on the topic by saying she's hiding from the witch hunters,
Hiding from witch hunters.
or the more lengthy and somewhat humorous response.
She developed a taste for country life, decided to open a practice out there.
Is that so? And does she lead her cows out to pasture at dawn? Milk them herself? I'd love to see that.
So would I. Except she'd need a cow, a luxury that would attract attention in Velen. And Keira's fiercely determined not to do that. She's hiding from witch hunters.
Later on in this conversation, you can make a similar interjection about Dandelion and Whoreson Jr.,
And that way turned out to be Dandelion. A good friend, but not necessarily the wisest choice under the circumstances.
The best I could do. Besides, what do you have against Dandelion?
again with a shorter and longer response.
Let me think. He's a chatterbox who's prone to hysteria and has about as much courage as a rabbit. Ideal partner for the heist of the century, really. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Go on.
Alright, now let's talk about why this dialogue is not part of the officially restored content in the next generation.
I'm looking for a whore.
Well, as was the case in White Orchard, we have both technical and narrative issues here. When I say technical, I mostly mean the camera positioning, which doesn't seem to be edited to match the rest of the scene. Usually the camera pans across and zooms in a little on Geralt and Ciri as they talk. However, in these pieces of dialogue, it sort of goes to a default, static, zoomed out mode and just stays there the entire time. This has to be quite easy to fix, but it indicates that the developers decided not to include these parts way back during the editing process, and it's not simply a bug that they aren't in the game. But back to the dialogue. The more significant issues with it are the narrative ones. First off, the hiding from the witch hunters response sounds unnaturally brief and abrupt, and it doesn't connect with the following dialogue at all.
Keira Metz? What's she doing in Velen?
Hiding from witch hunters. But you failed to meet there.
To be honest, the entire optional piece about Keira does not flow naturally with the main dialogue, since Geralt will end up repeating himself by essentially saying that things did not go as planned twice.
You landed with the crones. He ran into Keira. But you failed to meet there.
But the issues run deeper with the more lengthy response about Keira opening a practice.
She developed a taste for country life, decided to open a practice out there.
Is that so?
It is, in my opinion, too casual and light-hearted. At this point, Geralt knows extremely well that Keira was not really having fun in Velen. In fact, this conversation likely takes place soon after you've finished Keira's questline, where you find out just how bad things are for her. She was willing to dabble into dangerous research and share it with Radovid, of all people, just to get herself out of her current situation.
Keira, I won't let you do this. Thousands of lives in exchange for your amnesty might seem a fair price to you, not to me.
I'll not give you these notes, I'll not give you anything.
In fact, she's willing to fight Geralt to the death because of it.
Please, don't make me.
Shut up and draw your sword.
Couple that with the fact that only a moment ago, Geralt had arguably the most heartbreaking moment of his entire life. And so I just don't feel like such a dialogue about Keira fits here. Also, I have tested this with the various outcomes for Keira, and there doesn't seem to be any changes, except for one, I suppose. If you killed Keira, this dialogue is not available at all. In cases like this, I would normally assume that this is something the modders did, and I would love it if they respond in the comments, but it does fit with the fact that Geralt never mentions anything about Keira to Yennefer if he killed her on Fyke Isle, so it could be intentional.
These witches Ciri came across, she was lucky to escape them.
Witches?
Creatures more like. Can't say exactly what they are, but they're dangerous. Very. That's about all I've learned.
Good. You'll need to tell me more when we have some time.
Now, how can we make all this better? First off, it should be written in a way that flows more naturally, but most importantly, I would prefer if the dialogue about Keira is taken more seriously. Perhaps Geralt and Ciri could exchange a few lines about the current situation in the north. After all, things have gotten far worse for mages and people with unusual abilities precisely while Ciri was gone. Mages are being killed left and right, Aretusa has fallen and whatnot.
School overrun by Redanians. The libraries burn.
And perhaps Ciri does not realize the full extent of it. She was of course briefly with the Baron and in Novigrad, so perhaps she was brought to speed, but given the atrocities Geralt witnessed, committed by the Eternal Fire, I do think that a dialogue about Keira and the Witch Hunters should have had a more serious undertone. Alright, let's have a look at the second part now, about Dandelion. Unlike the dialogue about Keira, this one is not so problematic. It still doesn't flow well, but it can be made to work much more easily. Let's look at Ciri's lines that lead to the deleted dialogue. Currently, she says that instead of looking for Avalach, she decided to find Geralt and Yen.
Apart from which, I knew by then the curse was progressing. So instead of looking for Avalach, I decided to find you and Yen.
But in some earlier versions of the script, I bet she was meant to say that instead of looking for Avalach, she had to find another way. Because in the deleted line, Geralt responds by saying, "And that way turned out to be Dandelion."
And that way turned out to be Dandelion. A good friend, but not necessarily the wisest choice under the circumstances.
The best I could do. Besides, what do you have against Dandelion?
Now, the dialogue itself is also a little more casual than the rest of the scene, but given Geralt and Ciri's past experiences with Dandelion, I think such light-hearted dialogue makes a lot more sense than it did about Keira. So if only they could have re-recorded the first line to make it fit with the rest of the conversation, I think this dialogue could have easily stayed in the game. Now, another reason why they removed both Keira and Dandelion's parts may be the fact that, in addition to being extremely emotional, the entire scene is already quite big. You can learn and piece together a lot of important information about Ciri and the main plot, and to a lot of people who haven't read the books, this is literally their first proper interaction with her, so perhaps the devs simply felt like there's no need to make it even heavier with extra casual dialogue. Finally, I have been trying out other things with the Brothers in Arms mod, and I want to throw in another piece related to Keira Metz, since I talked about her anyway. So it seems they have fixed the location of the optional dialogue you can have with her about Lambert. Normally, it's only available after dealing with Imlerith while she is stuck at Kaer Morhen.
Geralt, just when I was starting to miss you.
Are you and Lambert?
Did you think yourself the only witch or a sorceress could possibly take an interest in?
You know, you two are actually a great match.
You think so? Thank you.
But with the mod installed, you can properly access this dialogue during the funeral.
Are you and Lambert?
Did you think yourself the only witch or a sorceress could possibly take an interest in?
And speaking of Keira being stuck, she still gets stuck in the next gen edition. I can't believe they haven't fixed that. This is like one of the oldest bugs in the game. I mean, maybe they felt like it's a good idea to have a vendor at Kaer Morhen, even though she still thinks she's at her house in Velen.
Bet the old witch who lived here left you a bunch of interesting sundries.
She did indeed. I gather you'd like a look.
Very much so.
Alright, with that, I believe I'm done. Let me know how you feel about these pieces of deleted dialogue and how you think it may have been made to work. Also, I've gotten some comments on my last video about this essentially being old news, and I realize that, but it is new to me, and a large part of why I'm making these videos is not only to show something, but also to share my thoughts on how and why I think it was removed and so on, because, you know, like I said in the previous video, I've been listening to dialogue in The Witcher 3 for forever, so when something gets deleted, I'm interested, I want to know why, I want to speculate on what went wrong, and so on. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you very much for watching, special thanks to my supporters and YouTube members, and until the next video, stay tuned and be good.